Sam, what was the appeal to healthcare.gov for you?
Sure. So I've always been interested in kind of using my skills to make the world a better place. And at Stanford, some of that was getting involved with Code to Change and teaching students about Unix with a Practical Unix class. And since then, I've tried to continue to do that in my work. So at Google, I was working on the education team, and that was actually how I heard about Healthcare.gov. So I knew that a lot of things were going wrong with it, and that some people were going in to fix it right after that had happened. But just kind of reading about that in the news, it was all very abstract. But then Googler Mikey Dickerson gave a talk, and he was one of the people who went there and fixed it in the first batch. And he talked about his experiences, about all of the things that were going wrong with the system, and about really how much impact that he had. And he just made it clear that there were a ton more opportunities like that. And so I signed up with him then, and I've been at healthcare.gov since October. So that was for open enrollment of this year. In my time there, I've been working on mainly two things. One of them is App 2.0, which is a new user interface. People get through that healthcare application about twice as fast as the old one, and also with a pretty significantly higher completion rate. And the other thing that I've been working on is the scalable login system. The login system originally was what caused about 70% of the downtime in healthcare.gov, and this new login system that we made, in addition to being much more scalable, much more reliable, is also a lot cheaper. So rather than costing hundreds of millions of dollars to build the first time and almost $100 million every year in maintenance, this new one is probably just going to cost a couple $1,000,000. So lots of savings in addition to more modern development practices.
How many lives are you touching at healthcare.gov? I mean, so many folks, so many Americans interacting with it. Do you have a ballpark or a number on that?
I believe that during open enrollment this year, somewhere between 10 and 20 million people.
Wow. All right. And how big of a team do you have there as students might be thinking, hey, that might be a cool problem to work on?
Yeah, so in government contracting, there are kind of two sides of the coin. There's the existing big players, so folks like Accenture and Optum and QSSI, and these are big contractors with hundreds of employees, probably dozens of whom from each organization are working on healthcare.gov. My team is just about 10 people, and kind of half of them on each one of those projects. Mm-hmm. So probably less than 24 person months in total to develop the new login system, for instance.
So I think this is I imagine a good example for students of a place where some places you want to work at, you apply online, and then you go through a real formal process. I'm imagining healthcare.gov was a little different.
Yep, absolutely. So the process there was after I talked to Mikey Dickerson, I kind of got my name on a list and then sent an email to some of the people who were currently working on healthcare.gov, and they got back to me. The actual interviewing process was pretty much the same as I would see at any other high-tech company, just some kind of technical questions over the phone, and then coming in for an in-person interview. Though there is a little bit of the kind of healthcare.gov stuff mixed in there too. So when I interviewed at Google, all of the problems were very abstract, whereas with healthcare.gov, I was actually working on the real code base for my interview. So a little bit more real, a little bit more of a startup-y feel. But yeah, it's in some ways it's very typical of a high-tech company. In some ways, it's very unique.
So if they're, just to be like real, shoot a straight arrow here, if a student actually wanted to be a part of healthcare.gov, what would they do?
Well, if they're watching this, then they could probably just send me an email. We're always looking for more bright folks, even people who don't have that much experience. I'm only 2 years out of college, and I started on Healthcare.gov. So I think definitely if you are a computer scientist and you have the right instincts and you're willing to work hard on these kinds of big problems, then Healthcare.gov would be a great place to work.
And I know you're on LinkedIn. I know that's where you and I connected. So students could probably find you that way as a good inroad. Um, so you, one of the things I've heard about healthcare.gov was it not getting off the ground that smoothly, kind of in a technical way. So where is it at with those kind of maybe original issues, and where is it at now today? And did you solve all that?
So there are enough issues with healthcare.gov that it will be a while before all of them are solved, but I think that the biggest ones have been worked out. So the login system was responsible for most of the downtime, and we just got that out actually just a couple weekends ago. And there are some other components that are not built on modern web components like Amazon Web Services and stuff like that quite yet. And so it'll probably be a little bit of time before everything is totally in the shape that you would want it to be. But things are mostly stable now. That said, there are also a bunch of other projects in government that where things are in much more dire straits. So even though healthcare.gov got a ton of publicity, it's by no means a unique project, a unique problem. So one thing that you might have heard about is the Veterans Affairs Administration. If you are a veteran and you need to submit a claim for healthcare, then you should be able to do that, but they have a huge backlog. So people might be waiting half a year or even longer in order to get their claims processed. And part of the problem there is kind of same deal as healthcare.gov, a lot of old systems that weren't very well designed, that weren't very scalable, and as a result, the people aren't able to process stuff as much as they should. And so it seems like anywhere that you look, you'll be able to find more big problems like these, more places where you'll be able to have a big impact. And I think that if you are interested in this space, there is just so much to do.
So one of the things that I can imagine is on your team's mind is like security of all the data that you all have. Can you talk to us a little bit about the confidence you have in the data being secure, or any thoughts at all on that?
Yeah, so when I was at Stanford, actually one of my favorite classes was the security class and the cryptography class, CS 155 and CS 255. And at the time, I thought that it was just kind of like a basic introduction to security, but at my time at Google and at healthcare.gov, I've actually seen just how useful that class really is. I think that having taken that, I personally have a very good grasp of security, both web level and down the stack. And I think that the team that I have working with me is definitely competent in terms of dealing with security. We, encrypt all of the data at rest and hash the passwords using PBKDF2 and plenty of other things that I could talk about specifically. But it definitely there is a lot of attention that gets placed on security. I think that that's actually one thing that's a little bit different about between government technology and technology maybe that you would be designing in a startup. In a startup, you might kind of put a lot of the security questions on the back burner, and then after you have a really stable product, you would start thinking more about the security issues, even though you should think about those from the start regardless of what you're working on. But in the government, there are a bunch of requirements around security, and so even though sometimes they are a little bit onerous to implement, and even though sometimes they might get misinterpreted, they do, to a certain extent, actually get you to think about all of the security questions right when you get out the door.
So you're I mean, just like a rock star in terms of computer science. When did you and computer science meet?
So I actually, coming into college, didn't think I would do computer science. I did debate in high school, and so I thought, oh yeah, I'll do political science or philosophy or something like that. And it was just during new student orientation that Mehran Sahami gave a talk about computer science and all the reasons that it was cool and that you could have a big impact doing it. So I cleared some room in my schedule and decided to take 106A with him. And then since then, I've just really loved computer science. I just took a bunch of classes at Stanford, did undergrad and a co-term in computer science, and I don't think that really it is the case that I am a rock star or anything like that. I think, I just kind of work hard. I'm interested in these kinds of problems, and I think really anybody else who is also interested in this space, if you're willing to work hard, then I think absolutely just go for it.
So to a Stanford computer science student then that has a lot of options in terms of internships and where I might go full-time, what would be your advice on how to make that choice?
I think that when a Stanford computer science student is looking at where they want to go full-time, really the question they should be asking is what they want to learn about themselves and what kind of impact they want to have. So if the kind of impact that they want to have is making a social web application or something like that, then do that. If they want to learn what it's like to work at a smaller company or what it's like to work at a bigger company, then try one of those things. I think that especially during internship, but also for full-time, don't necessarily go into it with the mentality of, oh, this is going to be my career for the next 50 years and I absolutely have to get it right the first time. Just treat it kind of like a learning opportunity, and I think that you'll probably be well served by that. And also, personally, what I use to make a lot of my decisions is where I think I'm going to have the most impact, where I think I'm going to be able to make a really big difference in the world. And I think that that was definitely one of the things that steered me towards Healthcare.gov, and as well as what has steered me towards things in the past, like the education team at Google or whatever the case may be. And I think that one of the reasons that Healthcare.gov was so attractive of an opportunity is just so many people are using it, and the technology was in such dire straits. And even somebody who was relatively inexperienced like me could have a really big impact.
So if you had to unpack impact at healthcare.gov, there's probably some real skills, some real things that are coming in handy for you to get this job done. So what would be your advice to students out there as they're going through a whole year of coursework? What things really are coming in handy now, so they should really take notes hard on those things in class?
I think that in class, a lot of the focus is on computer science and algorithms and the kind of theoretical underpinnings behind everything. And as a result, a lot of students think about, oh yeah, I really want to do something where I can do machine learning, or something where I can play with big data, or something where I can deal with a lot of algorithms. And I think that that absolutely is one side of things, but a lot of times there isn't that much attention in school paid towards software engineering. And when I say software engineering, I mean making code that's really easy to read, easy to maintain, code that's really well tested, being able to think about clean abstractions, that kind of stuff. And I think that both in my time at Google and also in my time at Healthcare.gov, I've seen just how important a lot of those things are, and also how much I still have to learn about all of that. So I think to a certain extent you can embody those good development practices in your classes. So just make sure that when you're doing an assignment for school, you're also writing unit tests, and that you're commenting your code and not just treating it like something that nobody else will ever read. But to a large extent, it's also just about the attitude that you go into things with, and thinking about, not just getting the job done, but also making good, clean code that gets things done the right way.
Now, Sam, I want to transition a little bit to Code the Change. You have this real awesome blend of kind of computer science and social justice wrapped up into one as a real charge for you. So talk to us a little bit about Code the Change.
Sure. So when I first got into computer science, I really enjoyed the problem-solving aspects of it and the creativity, but I didn't really know what the connection was between computer science and social change. So that actually made me a little bit nervous, and it was one of the reasons why I wasn't quite sure what I would do with computer science. So in my first year at Stanford, there was an event that was put on where a lot of different people were talking about different ways of achieving social change, and somebody from InSTEDD came and gave a talk, and also David Gobod, who would later go on to be a student body president, put on an event called the Dance Marathon Hackathon, which was a public health hackathon that was associated with the Dance Marathon. And I joined the leadership of that organization in the next year, largely as a way to explore for myself what the connection was between computer science and social change. And kind of using that as an excuse, I would talk to a bunch of nonprofits. So I was taking the Urban Studies 131 Social Entrepreneurship Lecture Series. And every week after the lecture, I would go up to the social entrepreneur and say, hey, how could a computer scientist help you in your organization? And I kind of used that as a way to learn more about what the space was. And what I found was that there are a ton of nonprofits and governments and social enterprises that really need more computer scientists. And also, there are a lot of computer scientists who want to really make an impact in the world and not just focus on profit, but also focus on making the world a better place. And so the next year, I started Code the Change in order to really try to bridge that divide. So the organization started as just a continuation of the Dance Marathon Hackathon. So we would put on events and bring together computer scientists and nonprofits, both as kind of a social gathering so that computer scientists could meet other people with the same values as they have, and also as a way to help them find jobs and find organizations that they might be interested in working in. Since then, we've transitioned away from the hackathon model and more towards longer-term engagements. So working with professors that are doing public health stuff in Guatemala and a lot of other similar engagements, and kind of with the idea of more weekly meetings and more social gatherings and more programming over quarter or over a year as opposed to over the term of a day.
Wow. So if there's a student that's thinking, hey, that might be kind of fun to get involved with to help Sam out, how would he or she do that?
So the meetings are generally at 8 p.m. on Wednesdays in the Huang basement. But also, if you don't quite catch that, feel free to send me an email or just poke around. A lot of students know about Code the Change at Stanford nowadays, so I'm sure you'll be able to find it.
So I'm confused. You're not based in the Bay Area? So do you actually have a crew kind of running the show out here on the farm?
Yep. So since I graduated, I transitioned the leadership of the Stanford chapter of Code the Change over to Andrew Suchu, and he'll be transitioning the leadership again, as any student group does when he's done. And so so there's a crew at Stanford who's running things now. And there are also other related organizations. There's the CS Plus Social Good folks, and there's the Association for Liberation Technology folks, as well as the Programming Liberation Technology. There's a lot of cool stuff going on in the design school, and really there's just a lot of cool stuff going on all around.
So I saw kind of a common thread in your accomplishments of having been on the Google education team. Seems that you're doing a lot of education work, partnering with schools through Code the Change. What, in a kind of social justice lens, what's a real problem out there right now in kind of education?
Uh, I think that there are a lot of issues. One of the things that I think computer science is tackling in the most compelling way right now is access. So there are a lot of people out there who, even if they're a really bright and motivated student, wouldn't have access to the types of high quality education that we can get at Stanford and places like that. And I think that organizations like Coursera and Udacity and Khan Academy have really started to tackle these problems head on, and that now even if I am not going to an elite institution, even if I am not in a country that has any elite institutions, or I don't have the financial resources to do that, as long as I have an internet connection, I can get access. I think that there are absolutely a ton of other problems in education. So I think that the online education initiatives have been really great for the people who are already kind of good students and really well motivated, but they have a less compelling story for the people who maybe need a little bit of extra help. And I think that that'll be one of the next big challenges for education technology, for things like personalized learning or things like better pedagogies and integrating those into curriculums. And I think that there are a ton of other issues that we can work on in education to make it better for everybody.
Now, as you think about your time at Stanford, learned a ton. Maybe there's some things that you passed on just because it's like, hey, this thing, I really want to do this. So if you had some advice to current students, what would be your one piece of advice while they still are here on the farm?
I think that for myself, one of the reasons that I got so much out of Stanford is just I tried to do everything, and sometimes that meant that I was overbooked and I wasn't able to do everything that I wanted to, but whenever there was a cool talk going on at Stanford, I would make an effort not to ever say no and just to try to go up, and then, I'll get my homework done at some point. And as a result of that, I saw the Dalai Lama, I saw like half of the Supreme Court, I saw a lot of cool politicians, a lot of cool social entrepreneurs, a lot of cool computer scientists, and I think that just kind of making an effort to really put yourself out there will do wonders. I think the other thing that I would have as a slightly more concrete piece of advice, and I actually heard this when I was taking a social entrepreneurship class, is if you don't ask, they can't say yes. So I think that there are a lot of people out there who really, especially when you're a student, but even after you're a student, a lot of people will just be willing to help you out or to give you an introduction or a recommendation or maybe even a job offer or internship offer. And I think that a lot of people are just kind of afraid of asking, but it's really easy to just kind of send somebody an email or give somebody a phone call. And that really is how I found a lot of the opportunities that I have with my internships during college. 2 out of 3 of them were organizations that I just cold sent an email, and they happened to have an opening for a computer scientist, and they were exactly the place that I wanted to be. And so I think just really trying to put yourself out there. If there's something that you're interested in, just send somebody an email, see what you can do to try to get yourself there.
That was something that I was totally noticing that as you talked about the connections you made for Code the Change, getting into your internships as well. It just seemed like there was always, or Healthcare.gov, there was a person there. It wasn't kind of like you were just sitting on your butt in your dorm hoping. So that's a good advice, I think, for students as they think about how can I get in to an opportunity. Some tremendous tools out there, and from anything like Piazza to the mentorship program, Sam, we have here at Stanford, as well as just the staff here at the Career Development Center that are making connections with companies every day. And I just want students to know out there, take advantage of that. It's there for you. That networking thing that seems kind of icky sometimes, believe it or not, I think a lot of us here at the office are doing that for you and want to make that connection for you. So come on by. Anything else, Sam, that you'd like to to mention while you have kind of the floor here at your alma mater?
I think if you are a computer scientist and you're interested in this type of stuff, then really just don't hesitate to reach out. I'm always happy to talk to people who are interested. I assume that my email will be posted in the footer of this video or something like that, so feel free to just reach out to me. Always happy to connect.
Hey, what is your email, just so we could give it verbally?
Sure, sam@samking.org.
Awesome. Well, I think we'll call it a wrap on this edition of Unplugged at Stanford. Thanks so much, Sam, for joining us. This is really the early stages. Yeah, this is the early stages for this show, and I think you were one of the real big hitters in terms of an all-star to get on the show, so we're glad to have you.
Thanks. Glad to be here.
All right. We'll see you next time.